The story of Rango begins with a pet chameleon named Rango who lives inside a small glass aquarium placed in the back of a moving car, and he spends his time imagining himself as a hero and acting out different roles. But suddenly the car hits a bump and the glass tank falls out onto the road where it shatters and leaves Rango alone on the scorching hot highway under the burning sun, and he struggles to breathe as the heat and thirst begin to weaken his body, and he slowly realizes that he is no longer safe and must survive on his own in the open desert. As he tries to move forward, he hears a voice and notices a broken armadillo roadkill who is searching for a mystical desert guardian known as the Spirit of the West, who is said to guide lost souls and give them purpose. And as Rango feels his throat drying and his strength fading, Roadkill points toward a distant dusty town called Dirt and explains that if he keeps moving toward the sun and follows his path, he will eventually reach a place where water can be found. And hearing this, Rango gathers his remaining strength and begins his long journey across the empty desert where the heat becomes unbearable and his vision starts to blur, but he keeps moving forward with hope guiding him. During his journey, Rango encounters a strange frog who warns him that a hunting hawk is circling above and tells him to stay still and hide, which fills Rango with fear as he looks for safety, and soon the hawk spots movement and dives down toward him, and Rango runs desperately to escape and hides inside a glass bottle, thinking he is finally safe. But the hawk grabs the bottle in its claws and flies high into the sky before dropping it back to the ground, and the bottle crashes and breaks, and chaos follows as the hawk continues its attack, and in the end, it captures the frog and flies away, leaving Rango shaken but alive. As night falls, Rango takes shelter inside a dry pipe, where exhaustion overcomes him, and he falls into a strange dream where he senses his own end. But suddenly, a strong flow of water rushes through the pipe and sweeps him away, and he is carried along until he is thrown out. And when he opens his eyes, he finds himself staring down the barrel of a gun held by a desert iguana named Bean, who questions him with suspicion. And to hide his fear, Rango lies and claims that he is an artist and begins to act in a dramatic way, which makes Beans see him as strange but harmless, and she allows him to ride with her and later drops him near her town. Rango walks toward the town and sees its name, Dirt, and he notices that the place is dry and struggling as the people suffer due to lack of water, and crops are failing and many are leaving. Soon he enters a saloon where everyone goes silent and watches him closely and trying to appear brave. He asks for a glass of water, but the entire room bursts into laughter because water is extremely rare, and instead he is offered cactus juice, which he drinks, and it affects him strongly, making him feel dizzy and disoriented. In this confused state, Rango, driven by fear and imagination, begins to tell a long, exaggerated story about his past, and presents himself as a fearless drifter who has survived many dangers, and this performance slowly captures the attention of everyone in the room as he builds a false image of courage and strength, which begins to shape his new identity in the town, even though deep inside he is still unsure and afraid. Rango continues his act inside the saloon of the dusty town and speaks with great confidence as he claims that he has fought battles that have lasted for centuries and has defeated many enemies without fear. And while speaking, he proudly describes his strength and courage in such a dramatic way that everyone listening becomes completely silent and amazed. And when someone asks him about the famous 7 brothers, Rango does not hesitate and lies boldly that he defeated all 7 of them with a single bullet, which makes the entire room fall into deep silence as the townsfolk begin to look at him with respect and believe that he is a legendary warrior who has come to save them from their troubles. At the same time, Beans walks toward the town bank with serious concern on her face and meets the manager Johannes Merrimack III, who is responsible for protecting the town's most valuable resource, which is water. And when she asks him about the situation, he takes her inside and shows her the storage where the water level has dropped dangerously low, which shocks her because she understands that without water, she may lose her ancestral land and her entire way of life. The manager advises her to speak with the mayor of the town. Back in the saloon, Rango continues to boast loudly about his fake achievements, and his exaggerated stories continue to grow as he tries to impress everyone around him. But suddenly, a group of dangerous outlaws enter the saloon and begin to create trouble, and one of these men steps forward and challenges Rango after hearing about his claims. And when he realizes that this is the same Rango who supposedly defeated 7 men, he becomes curious and doubtful at the same time, which leads to a tense confrontation between them. Rango steps outside to settle the matter, and as they both move outside for a duel, Rango struggles because he does not even know how to properly use a gun, and his fear begins to rise. But suddenly, the same deadly hawk appears again in the sky and swoops down, which distracts everyone and causes chaos, and the attacker becomes frightened by the hawk and runs away. As Rango turns around, he notices the danger and quickly tries to hide himself to survive as he jumps into different places, while the hawk continues to chase him across the town, and he runs wildly through the streets to escape while the townsfolk watch from a distance and misunderstand his panic as bravery. During this desperate struggle, a wire becomes tangled around Rango, and as the hawk pulls on it, Rango grabs onto part of a large water tower structure, and in a moment of luck and quick thinking, he fires his gun at the wire, which causes the heavy water tank to break loose and fall directly onto the hawk, and the hawk is crushed instantly, which brings sudden silence to the entire town, before it turns into loud celebration as the people cheer with joy and relief. The townspeople feel grateful and excited, and they bring Rango to meet the town's leader, Mayor Tortoise John, who is an old and clever desert tortoise, and he welcomes Rango into his office and shows him the town from above, while explaining that water is the most important thing in their world and that it represents life and order, and he pretends to admire Rango's bravery and offers him the position of sheriff, which gives Rango authority and respect. But in truth, the mayor has his own hidden motives and plans to use Rango for his benefit. After this, the town gathers together as the clock reaches noon, and all the people line up in an unusual ritual where they dance and pray for water. Soon, the entire town gathers near a tall water pipe, where the mayor calls for water to come out, but when the tap is opened, only dry mud flows instead of water, which shocks everyone. Beans lies, saying that the real problem is that the bank has completely run out of water, which shocks the crowd and immediately causes panic as everyone starts rushing toward the bank in fear and confusion. Rango quickly runs toward the vault, where he shows them the small remaining water supply and tries to calm them down by speaking confidently, and he says that there is still enough water left for 5 days if they stay controlled and organized, and the mayor supports his words to maintain order while secretly observing everything, and Rango then announces that from this moment, he will take responsibility for guarding the remaining water, which makes the townspeople feel slightly reassured, even though the situation is still dangerous and uncertain. That night, while Rango is guarding the bank alone, he suddenly hears strange sounds coming from beneath the ground, and before he can react, the soil breaks open, and 3 digging creatures emerge from underground tunnels, who are actually thieves, but Rango, in his lack of experience and misunderstanding, believes they are normal workers, or laborers, and Rango accidentally reveals important directions, and even allows them to continue moving around freely, which, unknowingly, helps them plan their next move. The next morning, the town falls into chaos when people discover that the last major water reserve has disappeared from the bank vault, and panic spreads everywhere as they see a large hole in the ground that proves the thieves came through underground tunnels. And Rango, who already feels responsible for everything, becomes deeply guilty and quickly gathers the townspeople to form a search team to track down the thieves and recover the water. And Beans, along with several others, join him as they light torches and enter the dark underground tunnel system in search of answers. As they move deeper into the tunnels, leads them out into the open desert, where they discover a shocking sight, as the town's bank manager, Johannes Merrimack III, is found dead in the desert, and the most surprising detail is that even though they are surrounded by dry land, he appears to have died by drowning, which makes the situation even more mysterious and disturbing. The group immediately mounts fast desert birds and continues the chase across the harsh terrain, and when night falls, they stop briefly to rest. Deep inside, Rango feels guilty because he knows he is building his identity on lies, and he cannot sleep peacefully, so he speaks with Beans, who tries to guide him while also reminding him of strange desert stories about plants and water signs which may help them survive. And the next morning, the group notices a suspicious gang carrying a large water container across the mountains, which turns out to be the thieves led by Balthazar and his sons Jedediah and Ezekiel. To capture them, Rango creates a strange plan where the group disguises themselves as performers and nomads, and they start singing and dancing in front of the gang to distract them while secretly preparing to attack. But the situation suddenly turns dangerous when the entire gang emerges from underground, revealing that there are hundreds of them, and they surround Rango's team, which leads to a chaotic battle filled with panic and movement across the desert. During the chaos, one of the enemies fires a shot which causes confusion, and Rango's group quickly grabs the water container and tries to escape, while being chased by enemies riding bats in the sky as bullets fly, and the situation becomes extremely intense. And while escaping, their vehicle crashes into a rock, causing the water container to fall, and when it finally opens, everyone is shocked to see that it is completely empty with no water inside at all. This discovery leaves everyone confused and angry, and Rango confronts Balthazar in frustration, asking why he stole the water when there is nothing inside. But Balthazar himself looks surprised and says that when he stole it from the bank, it was already empty, which creates a deep mystery, because it means the thieves never had the water at all. And this realization forces Rango and Beans to think deeply about what is really happening and who is actually controlling the water supply. And finally, Rango decides to arrest the thieves and take them back to town while still searching for the real truth behind the disappearing water. Rango returns to the city of dirt with the captured thieves Balthazar and his prairie dog sons, Jedediah and Ezekiel. He tries to calm the frightened villagers and prove that he is still in control of the situation. But even as he walks through the town, he already feels a strange doubt growing inside him because the missing water mystery does not make sense and the clues are not matching. So without wasting time, he goes straight to the mayor, Mayor Tortoise John, and directly accuses him while saying in a serious voice that he has a strong feeling that the mayor is the one who is behind the bank robbery and the water disappearance. The mayor immediately understands that Rango is becoming dangerous for his secret plans, so he quickly decides to take action and calls for his most feared weapon, which is the deadly rattlesnake named Rattlesnake Jake. And at the same time, Beans approaches Rango and warns him that the mayor is secretly buying land from all the villagers one by one, which makes the situation even more suspicious and dangerous. While outside, the angry villagers gather around and start attacking the captured thieves because they are frustrated and desperate for water and justice. Rango steps in front of the crowd and tries to stop the violence as he raises his voice and holds them back, while telling them to stay calm and trust him, and he reminds them that as long as he carries the sheriff badge, he will continue to protect them. And in that moment, the terrifying Rattlesnake Jake arrives in the town, and his presence immediately spreads fear among all the villagers, and even Rango becomes frozen in fear. Rattlesnake Jake moves forward and begins exposing Rango in front of everyone by mocking his stories and questioning his bravery, and he forces Rango to face the truth about himself. And he asks him about the 7 brothers that Rango claimed to have killed with a single bullet while handing him a gun, and challenging him to prove his lies by shooting him. But Rango's hands shake heavily, and he cannot pull the trigger because he knows deep inside that everything he said was fake and built on fear and imagination. Rattlesnake Jake continues to insult him loudly and tells everyone that Rango is not a hero at all, but only a liar and a fraud who built his identity on stories that never happened. And the villagers who once trusted him stand in shock as they realize. And Rango finally breaks down emotionally and admits the truth in silence as he stands helpless in front of everyone with no courage left to continue pretending. Rattlesnake Jake then warns the entire town that this village now belongs to him, and if Rango ever returns, he will be destroyed without mercy, which leaves the villagers terrified and confused, while Rango slowly removes his sheriff badge and throws it away as he accepts that his role as a fake hero has ended, and he quietly walks out of the town alone. After leaving the city, Rango wanders alone in the dark desert at night, where silence surrounds him, and his mind becomes heavy with guilt and confusion as he begins to question his own identity and purpose. Soon he unknowingly reaches the same highway where his journey first began. In a moment of despair, Rango tries to cross the dangerous road again, while fast-moving cars rush past him, but he somehow survives and collapses on the other side, exhausted and broken. And when he slowly wakes up, he finds himself in a strange and magical place that feels different from reality, where the desert seems peaceful and glowing, and time feels slower. There, he meets a mysterious guardian of the desert, known as Spirit of the West, who appears as a wise and calm figure, and in that moment, Rango stands silently facing him as his journey begins to change from confusion towards self-discovery, where he slowly starts to understand that his story is not over, and he still has a chance to become who he is meant to be, instead of who he pretended to be. Suddenly, Rango notices strange yuccas plants slowly bending and moving in one direction, as if they are alive and searching for something, and he realizes that they are searching for water, so he decides to follow them without hesitation. Rango follows the movement of the plants across the harsh desert until he reaches a tall hill, and from the top he looks down and sees a shocking sight where a modern shining city lies below, surrounded by green areas and large amounts of water, which feels completely unnatural compared to the dry town of dirt. and as he watches carefully, he notices that all the water is being redirected toward that city through a huge main pipe, while the valve that should supply water to the dirty town is completely closed. In that moment, everything becomes clear to him, and he finally understands the full conspiracy that the mayor deliberately cut off the water supply to the village so he could make the land worthless and then secretly buy it from the desperate villagers. And Rango's entire mindset changes as he realizes the truth, and without wasting time, he goes straight back to the thieves and decides to join forces with them instead of fighting them because now their goals align. Rango teams up with the thieves, and together they begin forming a master plan to expose the mayor and restore water to the village, while in the town itself, the mayor becomes more aggressive and tries to force Beans into signing over her land papers, but she refuses strongly and stands her ground. And in response, Rattlesnake Jake appears and grabs Beans to pressure the situation while fear spreads across the village. At that exact moment, Rango boldly returns and steps into the middle of the village with confidence and challenges Rattlesnake Jake directly, while the thieves and desert creatures prepare their part of the plan in the background. And as the clock strikes noon, the hidden plan begins when the thieves' family and desert allies open the main water valve together, and the pressure builds rapidly inside the pipe until it explodes through the ground like a massive fountain, which sends Rattlesnake Jake flying into the air. The entire village is suddenly flooded with water, and chaos turns into shock and relief at the same time. And above them in the sky, the thieves use bats to create the shadow illusion of a giant eagle, which confuses Rattlesnake Jake for a moment, but he quickly realizes it is a trick and starts firing shots in anger, trying to regain control of the situation. Then the mayor makes his final desperate move by threatening Beans and forcing Rango to surrender, and he locks both Rango and Beans inside the bank's glass water vault, where water begins filling up slowly, and it feels like they are going to drown, while the mayor becomes overconfident and even turns his weapon toward Rattlesnake Jake, saying that Rango and the sheriff were only tools to him and now he no longer needs them. And as the vault fills with water, Rango secretly holds one last bullet in his mouth and waits for the right moment. And when Beans and Rango kiss each other, he carefully passes that bullet into her mouth without anyone noticing. Outside at the same time, the mayor fires his gun at Rattlesnake Jake, but the gun clicks empty because Rango has already removed all the bullets earlier, and in that precise moment, Beans spits out the hidden bullet with full force, and it strikes the glass vault, causing it to crack and then shatter completely. The vault breaks open and a powerful rush of water bursts out, freeing Rango and Beans, while also sweeping the mayor and Rattlesnake Jake away in the flood. And in the chaos, Rattlesnake Jake finally realizes Rango's true courage and strength, so he respectfully salutes him before wrapping the deceitful mayor in his tail and dragging him away into the wilderness as punishment for his betrayal. After everything settles, a small mouse runs forward and speaks with relief, saying that the sheriff kept his promise, and now the whole village finally has water again, and the land is becoming green with crops growing and life returning. And Rango now stands transformed into a real hero, no longer pretending, but truly earning his place as he prepares to head off toward new journeys and new stories with confidence and purpose.